we have a lot of inquiries from the audience and all of that, but before we get, I guess, into what they're asking, I want to start at the very top.
Sure.
And kind of get your impression on what's happened the last couple of weeks. How would you kind of, if you had a client coming to you and they were kind of ignorant of this situation, how would you explain it to them to bring them up to speed and, you know, in an elevator ride or something like that? Well, maybe a couple elevator rides.
Yeah, I think you'd need a few at this point in time.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the first thing I would tell them is that go to your financial brokers and talk to them about this kind of stuff, because your lawyer's only going to be so useful on these kinds of questions in terms of, you know, generally speaking, when people ask me things, it's, should I do this? Should I not do this? So should you invest in GameStop? I'm not giving that advice one way or the other on this or any other podcast. But I think I would explain it as follows. Some Redditors in general, I think led by that group, discovered that there was an untenable position in a stock called GameStop that was overly shorted. And we could talk about shorts if you want. But basically that too many shares had an obligation to be delivered than existed out in the marketplace. And so these Redditors who run a subreddit called Wall Street Bets decided that they would pump each other up and say, doesn't matter what the company is, doesn't matter about its assets, doesn't really matter about what direction it's going. Right now, we can, quote unquote, squeeze the people that have to deliver this stock under these contracts. And if we buy up together and we, what do they go with online? Hold the line?
Yeah.
Then we're going to be able to force them to have to buy at higher and higher prices and, you know, make a lot of money. The issue I would have with talking to a client about this that has any financial savvy, any sophistication, has done any of this before, is that this doesn't look really like anything that's happened in my recollection in the market. This looks most like a pump and dump from a securities law perspective, which is that somebody gets a little piece of information or fakes a little piece of information, pumps up a stock price, gets people to go along, and then sells out. The difference is they appear to just be nihilistic and want to manipulate the stock price for the financial games that they say that the hedge funds are playing, and I can't really deny that they do. So it's this kind of weird half position where, from a lawyer's perspective, where you've got securities laws, and I deal with securities laws all the time, and we could talk about those as much or as little as you want. But my very first video on the topic, when so many people asked me about it in virtual legality, was, is this illegal, what the Redditors are doing? I said, well, from the Securities and Exchange Commission's perspective, it looks exactly like something that's illegal because you presume somebody's lying or not stating their position in a stock and doing these various things to pump and dump. But if you can't actually tie that to somebody on that Reddit subthread, then it's something that the securities laws aren't really prepared to deal with so well. And should they deal with it at all is kind of the open question. One of the questions that's gone around for the last week is this something that should be prevented? And a lot of people think no. Certainly some people think yes, it's not the way the market has traditionally worked. So it's one of those things that's this moment in time where all I can really guarantee is that Congress and the Securities and Exchange Commission is going to look at it hard. There's going to be a case study and 3 commissions and 2 subcommittee task force groups. Right. And there's going to be regulations that talk about it. But for right now, it's kind of an oddball thing where everybody has just agreed that regardless of what the underlying asset base of GameStop is, whatever its future might hold, we can go make a financial play on this stock and potentially make money.
Yeah, it's very strange for multiple reasons, because I remember when it first started happening, people, I think, that weren't really paying attention. I mean, everyone kind of knew what was going on after a couple of days, but originally people were saying like, well, they made some smart hires, like we were saying.
Yeah.
And, you know, they have a new board and, you know, Reggie Fils-Aimé there now, and they got some guys from Chewy, which is, as I said on another show, is a great company. I use Chewy all the time, but, okay. But I was like, guys, they're not driving up the price based on this. The underlying foundation of the company is decrepit. It's over. I mean, I don't have any idea how they saved themselves. And so it became a story, like you said, just kind of by coincidence in our sphere. But I think that it's kind of interesting because our sphere is full of so many interesting people, a lot of really smart people, and also a lot of people that band together and do the memes and do all that kind of stuff. And it seemed to me, Richard, like a perfect storm. In other words, GameStop was the target, but I don't know that it would have been like, I own Express and AMC shares after all this, right? I bought really low.
Fair disclosure.
But I don't think, right. I don't think Express would have garnered the same amount of excitement though, simply because it's Express, as opposed to GameStop kind of did have this weird tangential draw of bringing in a certain aspect of the internet that seemed to drive it up. Does that make any sense? In other words, it seemed to have this like Venn diagram, this perfect Venn diagram of the people that want to make money, the people that meme, and the people that are at the Wall Street Bets Reddit and all this kind of stuff in such a way that I don't know that we would ever see something like this again. Because I just think it's so strange. Anyone that knows anything about GameStop knows it's a company that's worth what? I was saying that they were valued at the top at maybe 50 times their real value. It's nuts. You know, maybe they should have a $500,000 cap, you know?
Yeah, nobody believes in that number. Right. So that's what makes it an interesting kind of question from a legal perspective, right? The securities laws are concerned with faith in the market. There's a general belief that you want to get the capital invested, you want to have orderly markets, and that's useful for America and investment in companies and infrastructure. This goes against that. Not even Wall Street Bets says that it's actually worth, under its fundamentals, its assets, whatever it is, $450. Now, some of them will tell you, oh, you know, the Chewy CEO, whatever. All those articles at the start were trying to figure out this really random set of events that happened. And I agree with you that none of that really has so much to do with what happened here. In my first video, maybe my second video on this topic, one of the things I said was GameStop was unique, as you suggest, because it's kind of a rock star in the world of the internet. And you see that with AMC, you see that with the other ones that they targeted. They were names that were consumer facing, that had some amount of cachet amongst people that were generally not necessarily investor people. That you knew GameStop because that's where you bought games when you were a kid. Even you might have known Express. BlackBerry, you remembered as the phone company, regardless of what their software infrastructure is now. This kind of stuff. Nokia, all things that you would buy. You didn't see this play happen, regardless of the short position or the fundamentals or anything else, on the ball bearing manufacturer that has a good outlook on Q3, whatever it might be, right? It's all these consumer-facing things, and GameStop was overshorted. And you know, you could talk for hours and hours and hours with a broker about how you get to 140% short with
it's called naked shorting, right? That's the term.
So there's an open question, and I don't pretend to know the specifics here. You really would need to have a financial specialist on here, but there are ways to effectively reborrow, where you borrow it once to short it, and then the next person borrows it again. That gets counted twice, and there's a certain velocity of money, except in velocity of loan shares, that can get you to a higher percentage than 100% without having to violate the naked short rules. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I mean, everything we say about all of this is all speculative on what's actually going on underneath the hood. But that's one of the things that I talk to my followers and subscribers about, is it's like, well, okay, so 140 is clearly wrong, and there's nothing wrong with the corrective. In fact, the market wants a corrective to that kind of thing. And so if it's Reddit, it's Reddit. But it doesn't mean necessarily that there is all this illegality and rampant corruption and all this stuff. People always want to jump to the highest level, grandest conspiracy in movie format. And that might be. We don't know. We won't know unless there's an investigation, until that investigation uncovers something. But it doesn't have to be. And the same goes with kind of the Robin Hood side of this thing as well.